Hello, I'm Calvin Kingdon. I'm currently a match move lead at Track VFX. Some of my projects include Stranger Things 2, X-Men Apocalypse, Rampage, etc. In this tutorial, we'll be going over supervised tracking and the do's and don'ts that come along with it. This tutorial is aimed at beginners who want to familiarize themselves with one of the most crucial and first steps in a match move. We'll be looking at the most basic controls and functions along with the corresponding hotkeys for a fast and clean workflow. And with that out of the way, let's begin. So I got this plate loaded up, just something I shot this morning, and I'm not going to enter in any information like backplate or anything here because I'm not going to be solving the camera. And let's hit OK. Immediately, I'm greeted by a pretty dark shot. If your footage looks fine, don't worry about this step, but I've got to correct a little color space thing because of my EXR sequence. I'm going to hit the P key and open up image prep. This window is where you want to do any alterations to a footage you want if it helps you track or see things better. Like you can blur your footage and get rid of noise, or you can brighten things up or down. Yeah, I'm just going to change my gamma to 0.454. Awesome. Okay, so this footage is very ideal to learn on because there's a lot of movement, easy parallax. It's very easy to get a good camera solve out of this. And there is loads of detail to put down some points. So let's see here. Where do we begin? Let's jump on over to the tracker control panel. Here we're going to be looking at about just 4 buttons. All this other stuff down here we're going to be looking at in other tutorials on some tougher shots. But we're just going to be looking at the creation wand to make trackers, the padlock to finalize trackers, this little arrow toggle switch which changes our tracker direction, and our little switch here to enable and disable a tracker. So let's begin by placing down some points. So if I wanted to create a point, I can use this creation wand and start clicking around anywhere in the scene. And for some reason my camera lock is on. It shouldn't be. If I hit 5, it's off. So yeah, I can keep dotting down trackers, but I don't like using this wand. I don't like having it on all the time. So I'm going to turn it off. So now I can click around and not create trackers. So I'm going to highlight all these, get rid of them with delete, and let's start fresh. Holding the C key, I can create a tracker by clicking. Ooh, there we go. So when you make a tracker, you want this little target box here, the inner box, to encompass whatever feature it is that you're trying to track in the footage. And this outer box is the search area. When you're tracking this little leaf, it's not searching the whole footage for that leaf. That is a enormous waste of resources on your machine. Instead, it's only going to look for this leaf in this search area. The bigger this is, the more area that your tracker is going to look for this leaf, and that is it slows things down. Let's just say that. So I'm going to shrink this down to a reasonable size. If your shot is very fast moving and erratic, it's good to have this bigger, because if things are jumping around, you want your tracker to not lose track of where that leaf is. So reasonable size. So tracking in SYNTHEYES works by just using your playback for your footage. So you can see this blue line. This means that your tracker is ready to track forwards. If I hit spacebar or play button down here, you could see that our tracker begins doing its thing. And in this case, it actually did a pretty good job at tracking that leaf, but the idea is to not let points do their own thing. If you're tracking professionally, you always want to monitor and babysit your points. So rather than just letting it do its own thing like this, I'm actually going to lock onto it so we can see what it's doing. And I'm going to do that by hitting 5 on my keyboard. So now as I scrub, we can see that we are locked on perfectly to our tracker, and we can see every little move it makes. So if I zoom in more, we can see that our tracker is actually kind of doing some little bumping things right here. We want it to stay centered on that leaf. With this shot, there's a little bit of motion blur, and if you see, the idea with motion blur and tracking is you always want to keep your tracker at the dead center of the motion blur. So as I scrub ahead here, we're gonna start doing little fixes. So I'm actually gonna start moving around frame by frame on my tracker, and I can do that with S and D. A lot of people like to use the arrow keys on their keyboard, but don't use those. You want to keep your left hand around A, S, D, and F. S and D is frame forward and back, and you're going to be using that a lot. Okay, so as I go forward and see that my tracker starts to go down from the center, I'm going to nudge it up. There's multiple ways to do this. I can drag my tracker and put it into the center. I'm going to undo that. Or I can go up to this window here, which I use a lot actually, and I can drag it. I like to use this window up here because it's easier to click than always mousing to these lines or the dot. So I always just use this big open space to move my tracker. So as I move my tracker, you can actually see that the point seems to track better moving forwards. That is because this little black notch right here, it was created when I actually moved the point. That is a key. And if you notice at the start of our tracker, a key was created when we first made it. And what that key is that is the initial pattern that your tracker looks at. So if you see this arrangement of pixels, how the pixels looks on this frame, the tracker is using this pattern of pixels as a reference to stick to for every other frame in the shot. But as you scrub ahead, you could see that that shape tends to change. The leaf, it's kind of rotated a bit, the perspective is different, it gets a little darker on the edge of the shot because of vignetting from my lens. But because I placed a little black key here, that pattern refreshed a bit at the end of the shot, and it was able to track forwards with that new pattern. And every time you move your tracker, you could see that a key is created, and that will affect how it tracks from then on, no matter where you create the key. So sometimes be careful where you create those keys. If you want to get rid of them, you can actually see right here, there's a button called Now. If I go to my little black markers, you can see it highlights blue. Let's say if I wanted to get rid of this key, I can turn that off, and now it's gone. And it's tracking as if it was using that original pattern at the beginning. But now it's back to having a little bump in there, so I'm actually going to go just before the bump. Rather than hitting Now or moving it, if I actually hit 0 on my number pad on my keyboard, it will drop a key. And the pattern is refreshed, and you can see now it's tracking a little bit better. There's a little bump there. But to fix that bump, I can drag my tracker again or drag it around up here, but it's way better to nudge it using the number pad arrow keys. So using 4, 8, 6, and 2, I can actually move the tracker up and down. And with S and D, I can go frame forward and back, see what my tracker's doing. And oh, there's a little pop right there. I can nudge it down. There we go, looking great. And of course, the benefit of nudging and moving your tracker is it keeps placing a key, so it keeps updating the pattern to what you want it to be on that frame. Actually, I'm going to scale this up too. So tracking forwards. Oh, see, it pops off right there. So if I drop a key here, hitting 0 on my numpad, there we go. So the tracker disabled itself as it got too close to the edge of the screen. But we still see the leaf. Let's say we want to make it last an extra frame or two. There's a couple of ways to do this. I can click and drag this box up here, and it'll bring the tracker back and let me drag where I want it. I can bring it back. I'm going to nudge on my keyboard. There we go. And next time a tracker goes off screen, we'll look at the other ways. Okay, so let's say this tracker is amazing, and now we want to leave it as it is. And the thing about SYNTHEYES is if I'm going to hit 5 to unlock from that tracker, is every time I play, it's always tracking. The track isn't going to change unless we alter the footage in some way and all that detail looks different. But we don't want to leave the tracker on. It's just messy, unorganized, and will cause you problems if you try to alter the footage, and we'll explore that in some other video. But I'm going to hit the little padlock up here, and you can see it locks the tracker, and nothing can be done to this now. The only things I can do is either delete it, I'm going to Control Z undo that, or change its color. And we'll go into why you want to change the color of a tracker later. I'm going to right click that square and undo that. Right clicking anything in SYNTHEYES tends to clear whatever changes you've done. Alright, so that tracker is done. Let's move on to another point. Let's take this little black dot. So holding C to create a tracker, hitting 5 to lock on, and now using S and D to go frame forward and back. Last time I just hit play and the tracker just kind of went ahead and did its thing, and here you can see it failed. So I don't like hitting play and just letting the tracker do its thing. That's not a... You don't want to be caught doing that if you're going to be a professional tracker match mover person. So sophisticated. So going frame forward and back, I'm going to babysit this tracker as I go, watch if there's any pops. There's a little pop there, very subtle, but it's there. So I'm going to hit 0 under my numpad, place a key. It's popping a bit again. And here with the motion blur, I'm going to nudge it down a bit to keep it at the center of that motion blur. You might be looking at this and think, oh, that tracker's barely bumping at all. But you'll eventually start to develop an eye for little subtle movements. It took me a good long while to realize anything was there. So for some reason, my tracker disabled itself. I actually don't know why it did that. I wasn't paying attention. I was talking and trying to be an educator. So to turn it back on, I can hit my little enable disable switch, or instead of hitting this, I can hit E for enable. And now you can see that it brought back my tracker and also stuck it onto that feature. And tracking forwards, and yeah. We could see on the last frame, it doesn't do very well. So I'm going to nudge it down, again, using my arrow keys on my numpad. There we go. Always check your previous frames to see if there's any bump. Always go forward and back. And the tracker disabled itself, so we're good. So we'll do a final check, do a little scrub, see what's going on. And we're happy. We're laughing. So I'm going to hit the plus button on my number pad to lock it. Once again, if you don't like hotkeys for some weird reason. 1, you're a psychopath. 2, you can go up and hit this little lock up here. I'm sorry I called you that. You didn't really deserve that. And let's see, what have we got here? Let's use the little arrow here to toggle our tracker direction now. Learn how to do that. So we're gonna go halfway through the shot, and we're going can't speak. We're gonna place a tracker. Hold C, create a tracker, and just kind of fit your detail. And now you can see our blue lines facing forwards, but not backwards. We can't track backwards. We can only track forwards. Even if I go backwards on the blue line, it's not tracking anything new. It only tracks if you go forwards. So let's track it forwards. I'm going to keep using my arrow keys to keep nudging this tracker to the center of this white dot, because it moves slightly and I could see it a bit. And we are done. Actually, I locked it. I didn't need to lock it. Plus button. Yeah, we weren't done with this tracker yet. So scrubbing, taking a look. And now we want to track in the other direction. So now is the time for us to use this wondrous arrow right here. Click. Another way to do that, if you again trying to stick with hotkeys, I cannot stress how much easier things are if you just use the hotkeys. Shift R is reverse. So now that the direction is facing backwards, you can track by framing back. It's the same thing as going forwards. Awesome, and my tracker so far is looking great. And we'll lock it with the plus button. Okay, let's find another point. Let's look at this little white notch on the concrete. So holding C to create. And you can see we're already on track backwards because we kind of left the switch that way. So hitting 5. Using S and D to go frame forward and back. Using the number pad keys so I can nudge and keep my tracker centered. And again, every time you nudge, and I know I'm going to be repeating myself a lot, but there's a lot of people who need repetition. I am certainly one of those people. But every time I nudge or move my tracker in any way, it keeps making a key, which keeps refreshing the pattern that it's searching for, keeps your tracker going smooth. Okay. Now I want to jump back to this key over here, but let's say I don't want to keep jumping to my mouse, and I don't want to frame back all the way to the beginning of my tracker. If you use A and F, you can actually jump between your keys. This is very handy for a number of reasons. One of those reasons we'll be seeing in another video as we start tracking with features that are being obscured by maybe a person walking by, but see, it's a nice way to jump ahead. Also, Shift A and F brings you to the beginning and end of the shot. So I'm just going to Shift F and then hit A to go to my left, to the nearest key on the left. And now Shift R changes tracking direction. And let's frame forward, S and D. I'm nudging as I go. All right, and plus button to lock. So let's track a couple quick points, and I'll just blurt out what I'm pressing and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and yeah, we'll track a couple more points and call it a tutorial. So let's give some love to the back. Somebody stop me next time I say something like that. That was a don't think too deep into that joke. All right, so I'm wondering if I should cut that. I don't know. You know, I'm gonna leave it in. I could do what I want. So the leaves back here. Let's C, create a tracker. Just kind of fit the boxes however I feel, and Shift R to change that tracking direction. And 5 to lock on. S and D to frame forward and back. Again, I'm gonna nudge it subtly as I go. I can keep tapping 0 too if I don't want to nudge. 0 also creates a key. Nudge up, because my tracker keeps wanting to kind of glide off to the edge of that feature. So I've tracked it as far as I can, and it popped off. Something I can do here, if I want to be lazy and not drag my tracker by hand every time it pops off, you can see the search box here actually is kind of figured out where it wants to be on this next frame, because this search box is always trying to predict where this target box goes. So if I hit E to disable, something that's pretty nice in SYNTHEYES is now if I hit the 0 key, it will place the tracker at the dead center of your search box. And since your search box has kind of predicted its path and was already sticking to that leaf, you know, it just kind of lines up already. And now I could nudge it. Oh, wrong button. I could nudge it over, keep it going. Depending on the shot, you may want to really let a tracker last as long as it possibly could. But some shots, there's so much detail surrounding that it's not worth putting the time into making this tracker work forever. So I'm going to hit E and disable this and take a good look. This tracker is awesome. Plus button lock. Okay, move on to another point. Let's get the edge of this. C to create, Shift R, reverse tracking direction, 5 to lock. And we are tracking backwards. And I'm just going to play the rest of the way. If your shot is clean enough where you trust it to get a decent track, and this is not a very safe thing to do, so don't do this often, but sometimes things have to be done within a reasonable amount of time. If I were to create a tracker, and if I hit play on my keyboard and just spam my 0 key to keep creating a key as my tracker goes, you'll keep refreshing the pattern. There's actually a little feature to do this automatically, but I'm not gonna show you that in this video. So if I hit play, keep hitting 0, you can see that I placed a key every so often, made it very quick, and we got a pretty decent tracker out of it. Again, not a very safe thing to do in all cases, but in this case, I'm just gonna let some things slide. Not the trackers. Don't let it be said that I am okay with sliding trackers. And let's get a pebble. Again, I jumped to the beginning of my shot just now using Shift A. Shift A and F, beginning and end of a shot. Let's get this leaf here. I'm going to actually hit play right now and then just spam the 0 key. There we go. And taking a look at it. Nice. Lock. Plus button lock. When you're placing trackers, you always want to think about every surface in the shot as foreground, midground, background. You want the foreground to be stable in case anything CG is going to be in the foreground. You don't want the camera to have a jittery path and you see something that's standing right here but it's not sticking to the concrete because there's no data there. A lot of people will look at points like this, and if they solve it, they'll see that the camera is solving and moving and think, oh, this is great. And then in some other program or even SYNTHEYES, they'll start placing some geometry, some ground planes and whatever, and think that it's working. But it's not. They're stupid. So, I wonder how many people I work with watch this and think I insulted them. I don't think I've worked with anybody that stupid. Anyway. Mean. I'm so mean. Okay, so let's track a point in the foreground. I'll get a little edge here going. 5 lock on. S and D frame forward. Always nudging. There we go. I could see that feature is still there and I want to keep it going. Nudge it. There we go. That's good enough. And let's get another point over here. Holding C, create. 5 to lock on. S and D to go forward and back. There we go. Again, 0 to create if you wanted to make it last a bit longer. Sometimes you get so desperate for points in a shot that you actually want to make the tracker last as long as you can off the edge of the plate. It's dangerous, but will save you in a lot of cases. Now let's get this little fine white dot. Why not? S and D to go for... Oh, I locked it. I accidentally hit the plus button, which locked my tracker mid-track. So I'm going to hit plus button and re-enable it. Okay, and always nudging to the center of this white dot as my tracker can drift off it. There we go. Hitting the 0 key to bring it back an extra frame. And plus button to lock. Okay. What else have we got? Let's get a couple more background points. get a little leaf here, Shift R, reverse tracking direction, S and D. Ooh, that was a jitter. Let's see what happened there. It looks like the waving light changed the pattern enough that it made this tracker jump around. So let's go just before that jitter and hit 0, create a key right there, go frame forward, and you can see it refreshed the pattern. It helped fix that little bump there. And coincidentally, I actually placed a key there where it was fine again. So yeah, we'll just leave that key. If you wanted to get rid of a key, you can tap 0 over a key and it's gone. Okay, so I'm going to keep nudging and babysitting this point. I'm not going to let it track by itself. You could see I let it slide off that white. I let it slip off there a little bit. So I'm actually going to disable all these keys, because if I tried to track forwards here and keep nudging it up, every time it gets to a key, it's going to snap back to where it was here. So I'm going to tap 0, use A and F to jump back a key. Just keep tapping 0 to turn them off to where I turned them off, and I am now where I want to be retracking from. Going forward, there you can see it starts to go to the bottom of that leaf. I'm going to nudge it up. There we go. Oop, bring it up more. This footage is very artifacty. All right, good tracker. One more. I see a really nice dot over here. Let's start tracking in the middle. Let's start tracking this motion blur bit. Why not? Dead center that motion blur. Scale it down a little bit. The search box is reasonable. Okay, last tracker. Let's make it a good one. 5 to lock on. S and D to go frame forward and back. And I trust this end bit. I'm just going to hit play and spam my 0 button. Okay, and now I'm going to jump over to this key. Once again, A and F to jump keys. Shift R and track backwards. All right. And you know what? For those who are brave, let's get one point that's getting obscured and then reappearing. Just in case that's all somebody was looking for. So this little speck here, this fern comes over and blocks the speck, and then at the end of the shot, the speck becomes visible again. So I'll place a tracker, lock on, go frame forward. Yeah, I'm going to hit play for a couple frames. There, I stopped it, nudging it, and take it as far as I can, however far I feel like taking it. And let's use E to disable it now. So let's scrub ahead to the point where that detail comes back. So right here. And if I want to bring it back very quickly, I could click on this. I can click in my little view window and start dragging it around again. And I can enable it with the E key. Oh, never mind. Ignore that. A really nice way to bring it back and have it continue where it left off is holding Z on your keyboard and then clicking. It will place it'll place the tracker that you were working with. Like holding C will create a new tracker every time you click, but holding Z will place the same tracker in whatever spot you want it to be. Okay, so let's go right there. I'm gonna hit 5 to lock on. So real quick, how do I know that this is the same detail I was tracking before? I don't at the moment. Well, I think I do. I don't remember. I was kind of talking and now I kind of forgot which leaf I was tracking. So I could scrub back and take a look at this last leaf, but you can see it's kind of annoying to look at. But because of these keys, I can use A and F to jump the keys and see the last detail, see the last thing I was tracking at the last point the tracker was active. And we could see it looks like I've landed on the same leaf. So now I can track forwards and keep going. Awesome. Okay, and this is looking good. And just for fun, let's do a solve. So I can go to the Solver tab and hit the big green Go button, but I'd rather just use hotkeys and use Shift G for Go. Hit OK, and you could see we now have a camera move. Once again, you never want to solve a shot with this few amount of points. Maybe you're on like a super slim budget, or some client wants something real fast, and all they want is maybe a bit of graffiti somewhere or to put some text here. Maybe it's fine to get away with a couple points like this, but in the film industry, this is a no-go. But yeah, so that has been my tutorial on point tracking. Hopefully it has been helpful for beginners, and I have no idea how to outro this video. Bye.